You are listening to the Billy D's podcast.
We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy D's podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. If you're new here to the stream, we always wait just a moment for everyone to lock on to the live stream. Sometimes that takes a moment if they have to refresh their app or whatever the case may be. We're about a minute and a quarter in, so we should be good there. And I'm going to pause just a moment, and in the background, we record the podcast that is on all the major platforms. We are on all of them. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, Audible. We are on all of them. So wherever you like to listen to your podcast, you can find the Billy D's podcast. All right, I'm going to pause just a moment, and we're going to start the program. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. On Thursday nights, we go live on X and Facebook, a number of other different platforms as well. And we give everybody a chance to check out behind the scenes live production in progress. And those Thursday night programs are almost always commentary around current events. It's opinion driven, but we try to give a perspective. I think one of the things that I've always tried to do when I was a blogger back in the day, and over the years as I started doing podcasting and other things, I've been in the broadcast field for a long time, but not as a commentator. I was always a disc jockey, and then I was a stand-up comedian there for a while. But I've always tried to, in my commentary, I've always tried to go a direction that you don't expect. You know, when news breaks and Sean Hannity comes on, or Rachel Maddow comes on, and you may like or dislike those individuals, but the bottom line is I know exactly what their position is going to be. Okay, I'm not exactly sure how they're going to get to A to B, but I know where they're going to land. And we try to do something a little different here. We try to check things out from a 360-degree perspective. We're going to talk about Trump today. We're going to talk about the speech that he gave earlier this week. And we're going to talk a little bit about social media. So let's get right into it. Trump's speech wasn't really technically a State of the Union. Okay. New president's just basically give an address of some kind, whatever it may be called. And being that it really wasn't a State of the Union, I can tell you that it really was more or less of a campaign speech. Now, I thought the speech was pretty well delivered, and it had a few moments that I wouldn't have done this or that or the other thing, but overall it was well delivered. The only thing that I would say about it is that it was way too long, and that's something that he has a problem with. You know, there's an old axiom in show business, and it applies to politics and speech making as well, and that is always leave them wanting more. You know, you don't want to have, if you give a concert, okay, and you're playing your heart out, and that's all great, and you got your audience going, that's about the time, forgive the phrase, but that you kind of want to pull out on them, all right? You don't want people leaving the concert that you just gave and saying, oh my God, I never thought that concert was going to end. Okay, that is not what you want. And if I was advising him, not that he would listen to me, I would tell President Trump, as a creator, what I try to do myself and what I try to extend to my clients, the best advice is short or brief, at least brief and impactful. Those two things. You want to be brief and impactful. Okay. You don't want to drag on for too long. And you want to make sure that some of the stuff that you're saying isn't just rah-rah, that it actually has some meaning. So I think on substance, and here again, you got to keep in mind that this was a campaign speech. I really didn't have much to talk about being president for just 40 some odd days. So as far as the State of the Union is concerned, it really wasn't that. Of course, technically it was not that. Formally, it was not that. But he did give a campaign speech and he spoke to his base. That's what he really tried to do. Now, here again, getting back to what I said about going a direction that you don't normally consider. I get asked every once in a while, am I a Trump supporter or not? And the fact of the matter is, I really don't care who is president of the United States. In terms of, I'm not going to rally behind somebody just because I like them or I like the brand. I think there has to be some things in place for me to say, yes, this is good. Okay, we can look at this policy, we can look at that policy, and so on. And that is something that, by and large, I'm going to say we have totally lost touch with reality as a society and as an electorate. I might make the argument that it's worse on the left. I believe now we're in a climate where people not only have their own opinion, but they have their own reality. Anything that goes against what they think should be is fake news. And I've said before, when I first heard the term fake news, it scared me because I knew it would go beyond the literal meaning. It would go to a place where, it's news I don't like. It's news I don't want to hear, so it's fake. And everyone now is in their own little reality. And I caught this clip from Stephen A. Smith. Now, I just love Stephen A. Smith. If you don't know who he is, if you watch sports talk at all, and I'm not a big sports talk radio guy, I get offers every once in a while. I flirted with the idea, but I'm just not that enamored with sports that I could do hours of that every day. I just couldn't do it. But Stephen A. Smith comes from the sports world, and he's also, I've noticed now, getting into more broad commentating. He's been talking about politics and some other societal things. And first of all, I got to give props to Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith is a broadcaster extraordinaire. He's one of the very best. He's in a category that we haven't seen for a number of years. When I was younger, in first getting started in the 1980s and the 1990s, there were a lot of really good broadcasters, even in my own area, that I aspired to. And we really don't have those types of individuals anymore. We really don't. Stephen A. Smith is somebody that Yogi Berra. So many great quotes from Yogi Berra. I kind of have my own Billy D's quotes, and that is Stephen A. Smith. I agree with Stephen A. Smith even when I don't, because of the fact his perspective. Here again, getting back to that, he doesn't have this filter on everything. He always brings this very powerful, well-enunciated, well-delivered message. And I just think Stephen A. Smith is just an absolutely great broadcaster. And what I want to do right here is play a little bit from Stephen A. Smith, what he was talking about, what I'm talking about. It's not just about supporting a person, but it's about supporting reality.
His so-called landslide and blowout win. But he won the popular vote by 1.5%, one of the smallest ever, and he won the general election by less than 50%. So what kind of mandate is this really?
Well, it is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate.
Yes, and in fact, I wouldn't call it a mandate. Even that's a mandate that's a word that we like to toss around. In reality, he won, plain and simple. And I think Stephen A. Smith did a great job of illustrating the win. But here again, we're in a situation now where we mold reality. And according to the left right now, and there's a prime example, this is the not my president crowd. Now, these are the people that want to deny reality. This comes from a left group now of liberals. Their brand which is largely the Democratic Party, has an approval rating that is in the 20-somethings. I heard 29-something the other day. 29% is how their party and their platform is being viewed. Yet they are saying that Trump doesn't have a quote-unquote mandate because he didn't win big enough. Okay, that's the thing now. You can't just win. You have to win by some margin that everybody agrees on is truly a win, truly a mandate. And this is the type of, here again, not just to nitpick this little issue. What's a mandate? What isn't a mandate? This is the way everything is treated now. Everything is put into a category that fits my reality. This is the reality that I like, okay? And I don't like Donald Trump, so therefore he doesn't have a mandate, all right? And he doesn't have a mandate because he didn't win big enough. Well, what does that say about your side? You lost, okay? He didn't have a mandate, but you got even less. You got even less. And as Stephen A. Smith pointed out there's other metrics that go in judging this. Now, I would only say that in regard to President Trump specifically, I don't know that the win this last fall is directly attributable to him as a candidate. And that's not to take anything away from him. But the Democrats did an excellent job of creating poison. You know, the weird far left ideas and proposals that they put forth, and they championed the wokeism, the cheering district attorneys prosecuting former presidents for what amounted to political shenanigans. How many of the funds went from the books here to over to there and went to what amounted to a sex worker? This is the mandate that a certain district attorney ran on in New York. I come from another era, man. I come from the 1970s and the 1980s where if you weren't strong on crime, you didn't win elections. And now we have prosecutors that don't even talk about the crime in the streets. It doesn't even come up. What they talk about is prosecuting a former president. That is their mission. And they appeal to a voter base that, quite frankly, is out of it. They don't understand what's important until, I was going to say, until the walls are falling down around them. But even then, even when the walls start falling down around them, they still will not concede that their policies and their attitudes are contributing to a lack of quality of life for our society. They still will attribute the problems that they created onto somebody else. This climate. I want to stay with this climate for just a little bit longer. As I said, there's nuance in everything, and swinging to the other side in response. The conservative Republican side was totally enamored with this speech. Totally enamored with this speech. And there's some things that, here again, besides going long, there's some things that I'm 50-50 on. And I should be able to say that as somebody who is mostly conservative most of the time. Not always. But one of the things that I'm a little nervous about are the tariffs. And he didn't go into a whole lot of great detail about the tariffs in general during the speech, other than, they're going to do this and they're going to do that. They're going to bring manufacturing back to America, which is what the general rule of thumb is that's what the goal is, to bring manufacturing back to the United States, because it's going to be more efficient to manufacture things in the United States than it is going to be to manufacture it elsewhere, creating jobs elsewhere, and then importing it into the United States. That's how the theory goes. Now, today, this is March 6th, and I say March 6th because this is fluctuating all the time. There's been some amendments to the tariffs that were put in place on mostly on Mexico and Canada and China as well. But in regard to Mexico and Canada, there's been some changes. I couldn't go down a litany of exactly what all they are in terms of what's been amended, but it's been put out to April 2nd. And there's been a number of things, mostly involving car parts, produce, and some other things. So I guess you could say there's some relief in this. A lot of people were really nervous here in the United States about what the tariffs were going to do. Canada was very nervous. They're probably going to be impacted by this more than the United States is. But it's caused fluctuations in the stock market and some other key indicators throughout the economy. Now, this is an objective truth. Okay, and I know here again on the conservative side, now I'll pick on them. Their reality is, oh, no, that's all a bunch of, it really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything unless there's a Democrat in office, and then it's the end of the world. That's how things work. Okay, with that being said, I can tell you, not being an expert on the stock market myself, I know that there's a few givens with the stock market, and that is that you are better off going into a situation with the stock market with a bad situation that is clearly defined, okay? A bad situation clearly defined moving forward is better for the stock market than uncertainty. Uncertainty is not good for anything in terms of our economic indicators. So the tariffs are on. The tariffs are off. The tariffs are on. Well, not completely on, but some of them are still on, and these other ones are still on. And then in April 2nd, we're going to reevaluate this whole thing again, and maybe some of them will stay, and maybe all of them will go. This is not a good way to have economic stability starting out. And I'm very optimistic about this administration. I believe that this could be a very positive administration, and I always want to believe that, even if it's a Democrat. Okay, the problem is we haven't had good Democrats, and the when I get into the reaction to this speech, I'm going to illustrate that a little bit. But to make a long story short, stability is very important moving forward, and right now there's a lot of uncertainty. And that would be my concern. And we should be able to talk about that as, I don't know what you would call me, a conservative. I lean right. Okay, fine. If that's the case. So I'm going to get lambasted for saying that this policy could be problematic. I hope not. I hope this is something that works out really well. He himself admitted that there could be some ups and downs in this. So that tells you what you need to know. I do believe that the Democrats, again, during this speech, shot themselves in the foot. All right. The paddles looked ridiculous. The heckling was ridiculous. Now, I know Marjorie Taylor Greene and some other things some other people have shot off their mouth during presidential speeches. And I don't like it when they do it either, quite frankly. That's the moment that the president has, regardless of party, to lay out whatever he wants to lay out. Okay, that's a moment that he has the largest audience, and it's once a year. Okay, and there's no reason why there should be this shouting and this demonstrating from the Congress during these moments. I believe it's a bad look no matter who does it. The only thing is Marjorie Taylor Greene said her piece and then she shut up. Okay, there was a Democrat that carried on a little too long. He had to be escorted out. And, the paddles and all the noises and the ohs and the oohs and all that stuff, it's a bad look. And here again, Democrats right now sitting below 30% in approval rating. This is not the way to be behaving. This is not a junior high school auditorium. This is a place, this is the Capitol. This is a place that the world is taking in. And the president who is speaking should be able to sink or swim on his own. He should either come off great or come off poorly of his own devices. There's other places that these Congress people can voice their opinions either to their constituents or to other people without disturbing it for people who want to listen. All right. And just because people want to listen to Trump on this night doesn't mean they're Trump supporters, but they want to hear what he has to say to make their own evaluation. You know, we hear so much about free speech, and we always think of the word speech, free to speak, free to speak. And the fact of the matter is free speech isn't really about your right to speak freely, although it is. But the component of this that is very important is that everyone has a right to listen to different points of view. Hearing is as viable a part of free speech as any part of speaking. This is why I am totally against when you have person A holding an event for the people who want to hear what person A has to say, and somebody comes into there and shouts them down. What they are doing is they're interfering with that audience who came to hear what Speaker A had to say. They are interfering with free speech, the receiving end of it, the freedom to listen to whoever we want to listen to. And that's the part of free speech that gets forgotten. All right. When you go somewhere and disrupt a person speaking, you're not disrupting them. All the people in that crowd who came to hear that person, you are interfering with their right to listen to someone that they want to listen to. And if you really are in opposition, then there's designated rules for this. You go to this area, make your counter argument, whatever the case may be. It's not a matter of shouting the other person down because you have the right to shout, because you have the right to free speech. That's really kind of not exactly how it works. In regard to the Democratic response here again, the Democrats, near as I can tell, and by most of the analysis, were ridiculed fairly heavily about their reaction to the Trump speech. Now, I will say this, and this is where I'm going to get in trouble again. Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin gave the rebuttal. And here again, it was getting late by then because it was a long speech, but I made the effort to listen to what she had to say because here again, I do believe it is important. She did not do bad. Under the circumstances, you got to keep in mind right now, the Democrats are in a hole. Okay, their message is not landing, and they don't have a message, which is a whole nother topic. Their only message is that Trump is bad. But anyway, she's in a position where she's trying to bring the Democratic brand up, and it's at a very low point. And following, the Trump speech, which obviously was his forum, it was his night, and she was in a bad position. But I got to tell you, I think she articulated her positions very well. Now, whether you agree with them or not is another thing. But I think she tempered the right balance of criticizing the president and at the same time maintaining a certain amount of moderate views, which is something that, here again, the Democrats just simply cannot do. They champion all these radical ideas. The only thing they have to say about leadership is Trump is bad, and there's really nothing to hold on to. You know, it's like the old saying, you got to give me something to hold on to, and it's just not there. I was deeply disappointed by the reaction by the Democrats to the DJ Daniel. Now, DJ Daniel is a child that is suffering from a serious life-threatening disease. He is very much like a lot of kids are, wanting to be a police officer. And there was a moment where the president made a little presentation to him. And just briefly, I'm going to play a segment of that right here.
And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
Okay, I don't know how any person can take that in and not feel something. How can you not? I mean, that is such a sweet moment. But there was very little reaction from what I understand, because the cameras I really couldn't tell by the cameras that were on the broadcast, from the Democratic side of the audience. One, stand, or I believe there was one Democrat did, or give a slight clap. How could you not clap for this? I don't understand. Let me preface this because I'm going to get into what Rachel Maddow and Nicole Wallace said about this, and let me put some context here. At all of these types of speeches, presidents put people in the audience as examples of whatever it is that they're talking about. For example, if you're talking about how a certain policy destroyed a lot of jobs, you might have a worker in the audience who lost his job after 20 years, somehow or other got cheated out of his pension. These are things that all presidents do as a method of branding, as a method of communication, and some might even argue as a method of manipulation. But in the past, we've always given that person a pass as the audience and as the opposition party. When you hold up somebody as an example of someone who has been harmed by policies, we don't argue with that particular reality. Okay, we all recognize that it's an example, and you could pull an example of anything. In a country this size with 300 some odd million people in it, I don't know what the latest numbers are, 330 million people, a vast expanse of land, all kinds of different living environments, urban, country, what have you, different economic, socioeconomic strata all through the country. No matter what your position is about whatever it is, you can find an example of something that it didn't work. Okay. So I think we all recognize that, but we understand that person who was shown, their reality is valid. Their reality is valid. I don't know of too many times when we have twisted that reality for the person who's being showcased, for the person that lost their job, for the person who was harmed by some medical procedures or some sort of drugs, whatever the case may be. We understand, exception or not, that one person has a reality that is real to them. Okay. With that being said, for some reason this time, I'm going to say some of the left-wing commentators went off in a direction that I personally do not feel good about regarding this young man. Rachel Maddow, who of course is one of my very favorites, this is what she said. This is what she took from that. For the record, and this is disgusting, the president made a spectacle out of praising a young man who thus far survived pediatric cancer, as if the president had something to do with that. Really? That is your takeaway from that. I'm going to play that clip so you can check it out yourself. And I tied in with that. I have Nicole Wallace. And Nicole Wallace, she always talks like this. She's always talking about this. Now, wait until you hear what Nicole Wallace had to say about the young man you just heard. What context she put into it.
For the record, and this is disgusting, the president made a spectacle out of praising a young man who thus far survived pediatric cancer, as if the president had something to do with that.
And I let myself feel joy about DJ, and I hope he's alive for another, 95 years, right? And I hope he lives the life he wants to live. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. And maybe when you have childhood cancer, that crystallizes for you. And I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide.
Well, thank you, Nicole Wallace, for that very interesting commentary. I'm at a loss for words as to how this has gotten distorted. And for her to talk about that situation, ring in the future of that young boy and raise the possibility of that person dying by suicide, I don't know, to make that kind of a point, to make some kind of a political gain, when there's a real family there. There's a real young boy who's lucky to be alive and enjoying some moments that this life has to offer from the President of the United States, from our government. So many organizations are treating this young man so sweetly, and you can tell he is genuinely moved. And I will also add, if I was, I'll be damned if I was going to play it, but there is some videos online, of this young man being ridiculed, and ridiculed not by right-wing conservatives. And here's where, like I said, I'm not really a partisan. I guess you could say I could lean right, but I call it like it is. And the left-wing nutcases are ridiculing this young man, ridiculing him personally, making fun of him to his face in real life situations, not just online. You can find the videos if you do some searching. Now, what I find it really odd about the safe space people is they're all about safe spaces until they run across someone they don't like. Then all of a sudden, they don't give a damn about safe spaces anymore. Okay? They will ridicule you into the ground. They'll want to cancel you. They'll want you to lose your job. And this is the kind of thing that just makes me nuts, that this wonderful young man was treated that way. I actually have a hard time even just doing this commentary, as you can probably tell. Unbelievably, just to score some political points with some nutcase constituency that you have, to ridicule a person like this. And in the case of what we just saw, twisting that reality into the reality of his story into some ugly thing is, Trump was making a case for the fact that he had something to do with the cure. That's precious. Now, quite frankly, I didn't listen to the whole half hour, whatever it was Rachel Maddow said. Maybe there's something here I'm missing, but I know enough about her to know where this stuff comes from. She has a shtick, in my opinion, that's a little different than Sean Hannity's. Sean Hannity, when he goes to the right, is very red, white, and blue. You have to love America and da-da-da-da-da, and that's his shtick, okay? Rachel Maddow has this shtick of being this highbrow intellectual. And she will use a lot of fancy verbiage and manipulate a lot of statistics. There's an old saying about statistics, that figures don't lie, but liars figure. I mean, you can twist around a certain amount of statistics into an ugly commentary very easily. It's just a matter of which statistics you want to pick, which ones support your position. And here again, I don't want to run the risk of taking what she said out of context. You're fully welcome to listen to her as much as you want and make your own decisions. But what would and President Trump actually said this during his speech. What would I have to say to get a cheer out of that side? So I bring this to you. What would President Trump have to do or say for Rachel Maddow to say anything good? What would it be? And quite frankly, I would say the same thing about Sean Hannity to a degree, although I believe he, at certain times, gave credit to Obama and some other things when things went well. I know other commentators have. When Obama was president, that's when Bill O'Reilly was on Fox News. He most certainly would. He gave Obama a proper credit a number of different times, and actually it cost him. He had conservatives coming after him, and things just shouldn't be that way. Okay, I'll give politics a rest, and I'll wind out the last third of the program with social media. We all love social media, don't we? And I'm going to tie it into a little comment about free speech. Okay. When it comes to free speech, I am what I would call an absolutist. Okay. I am for people's ability to speak. And here again, it's not just because of their ability to speak, but it's for the rest of us to be able to listen to that person if we so choose. When somebody gets quote unquote canceled, okay, and there's this mob that comes out and intimidates the broadcasters, intimidates the advertisers, and gets somebody that they don't like off the air, they're not just silencing that person, but all the people that listen to that person, they are telling them, you don't need to listen to this person. We're going to make this decision for you. That's what I don't like. Now, a certain blast from the past. Do you remember that Eminem song? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? I'm going to play a little clip for you right here. I'm not going to tell you who this person is right away. She identifies herself. If you haven't seen the clip yet, take a listen to this and see how long it takes you to guess who this person is. Here we go.
Today is Saturday, March 1st, 2025. This is my first of probably many recordings on a series that I'm starting. I am a legal advocate. I am a researcher. I've been in the legal field since 2011. And in this capacity, I feel that it's necessary, if I'm going to continue to operate appropriately as a legal advocate, that I start to advocate for myself and also advocate for my daughter. For those of you who don't know, my name is Casey Anthony. My daughter is Kaylee Anthony. My parents are George and Cindy Anthony. This is not about them. This is not in response to anything that they have said or done. That's not to say that I'm not going to respond at some point to some of the things that they have said and done. The whole point of this is for me to begin to reintroduce myself.
Okay, that's Casey Anthony. I should say the infamous Casey Anthony. That is the person who had a daughter named Kaylee, and there was a murder trial, and she came out as not guilty. And a lot of people were up in arms around that whole case. Now, that could be a whole subject in and of and by itself. In my opinion, what happened with that case was that the prosecutors shot too high. They really went for a premeditated conviction. And to demonstrate that is extremely difficult given the circumstances around that case. If you're aware of it or if you want to research it, that's a whole nother thing. Most of the people felt that she was guilty, and I can't say I knew, but I strongly suspected that she was going to walk. I've always been, monitoring current events, and I kind of monitored that case, and it was pretty clear to me that, number one, the prosecutor had shot too high, and number two, the defense did a good job of raising doubt. And that's an important thing because the defense just has to raise doubt. The prosecutor has to, make his case beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's much harder for the prosecutor in a lot of those cases, and a lot of times the money is on the side of the defense in the OJ case and others. So that was just a bad or a perfect storm, so to speak, and I knew where that was going. I absolutely knew where that was going. I had highly suspected that she was going to walk, and she did. Okay, now she's raised her head here and there, but for the most part, she has been quiet. Okay, that video, she apparently has made an appearance on TikTok, of all places, our favorite little place. Now, I've heard different things over the last 24 hours. I've heard that she took down the account. Then I heard it's back up. I checked earlier today, and when I checked, the account was still there. That posting has millions, way over 4.5 million views. Okay. Let's talk about the free speech part of this first. In terms of free speech, being an absolutist, she has the right to be out there. Okay. She's not convicted of anything. She is rightly or wrongly. And she can create a platform and speak about whatever she wants within the rules of our society. Okay. So I really don't like the idea that some people want to get her canceled, even though I understand that she is a very controversial personality. She's unlikable. I think what really did her in terms of the unlikable chart was the fact that she was out partying and all that when the young girl was missing. Doesn't necessarily speak to guilt, but it is very unlikable behavior. So I don't know if there's been some sort of an online trying to get her down or anything. But as it stands, the last I checked, she's still on social media. The backlash has been severe, however. And this is where I would hope that in a free society, things work the proper way. And I would say the same thing about OJ or any of them. Okay. If OJ had at some point, well, he did. He was on social media. He didn't quite actually get the reaction that Casey Anthony did. But he was out there, and I wasn't wanting to take him down. He, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, was a free person at that time. And he was saying his spiel. And I would hope the proper reaction by our society as a whole, just simply not to listen. That's how it's supposed to work. So I would hope that a person like this does not benefit from whatever it is that they did. I would hope that common sense would be that I'm not going to buy OJ's book, okay? And I'm not going to necessarily buy into whatever Casey Anthony is doing. But I would say that for the time being, unless something else happens, I would not support any move to, quote unquote, cancel her. Now, with that being said, I'm going to follow this because I find this very intriguing. There's been, if you follow the reactions, what I like about social media is not so much the fact that somebody like Casey Anthony can come out, but what I really find such a fascinating study in human behavior is the reactions. The reactions are amazing to me. And I'm going to just kind of follow this to see, the dynamics of this. There's been a huge backlash. People saying, "Oh, well, make this person go away. I can't stand her," and all this other kind of stuff. And the trial is being relitigated, which I find very interesting as well. People are sorting through all the details, and there was a documentary a couple of years ago about this case. I imagine that the views of that are almost certainly going to go up. I might revisit it myself just to refresh my memory about some of the details and get a fresh perspective on it. But anyway, that's going to be interesting, and I'd be kind of curious as to what do you feel about this? It's very very interesting. And one of the lines I used to like, I forget where I picked it up exactly. I'm not sure if Bill Maher said it, but when somebody is unwelcome, when somebody is unwelcome at a party or whatever, the line that I really liked was they're about as welcome as Casey Anthony at a Chuck E. Cheese. So anyway, I know. I like that kind of humor. I apologize. But anyway, it's going to be interesting checking that out. The social media is an interesting place. And the study in human behavior when it comes to social media is worth the time, in my opinion. All right. Billy D's right here. Just a little reminder. You can follow me, speaking of social media, on X, which at one time, not too long ago, was called Twitter. And you can find me there at Billy D's. Heard something you like, heard something you don't like, tweet it at me. Go right ahead. And feel free to follow the Billy D's podcast on X for some of the latest updates, the things we're doing. We have some interesting stuff coming up. And you can also check us out on the Billy D's podcast page on Facebook. Now, you can find the Billy D, if you're checking out the live stream here, you can find the Billy D's podcast on all the major platforms. We are on them all. We have a 10-year history. And there's plenty to choose from. And I one of the ones, if you look through the playlist, please look for Stephanie's Story, the night a drunk driver changed her life forever. That has gotten a lot of listens. We actually recorded that online with an online forum. We had people come up and ask questions. And her story, the horrific nature of the crash that was caused by a drunk driver, and the fact that he basically got away with a slap on the wrist is all part of the story. And it's one of the reasons why she is an advocate for crash survivors, which is a type of trauma that we don't hear much about. You know, we hear a lot about trauma survivors, but we don't necessarily hear about crash survivors, specifically ones that were caused needlessly by a drunk driver. So check that one out. That would be a good episode to check out to get some wider perspective about what we do here. And I would really appreciate it. All right. That's going to do it for this evening. And I hope to talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Billy D's podcast. Follow Billy D's on X at Billy D's for updates about the program.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy D's podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy D's podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.